Welcome to Xbox On, where we've got another basket full of great deals for you to check out. Starting with a special sale that lets you take a historical tour through one of the industry's biggest players, Ubisoft.
And what better place to kick that off than with one of Ubisoft's most acclaimed cult classics, Beyond Good and Evil. Originally released back in 2003, this third-person action-adventure game is the sort of title that we found ourselves continually coming back to ever since. Maybe it's the clever mix of stealth, action, and exploration which the gameplay offers, maybe it's the dark and twisting story, or the unique sci-fi world which it created. Maybe it's the charming Rastafari space rhinos who run the local garage. Whatever it is, there's really something special about this game. From its anthropomorphic characters to its clunky hovercraft and extraterrestrial conspiracies, Beyond Good and Evil is simply packed with personality in a way that makes it almost impossible not to fall in love with. And now at 70% off, it's a bargain too.
Long before Altair and his fellow assassins were hopping over rooftops, Ubisoft was honing its parkour skills on the Prince of Persia series. From the soon-to-be remastered Sands of Time and its various sequels to the cel-shaded remake, the series has been on quite a journey, leaving great titles like The Forgotten Sands to sometimes get a little bit, well, forgotten. Much like James Gunn rebooting Suicide Squad by adding a "the" and a WWE superstar, The Forgotten Sands offered a soft reset for the Prince of Persia games. We catch up with the Prince 7 years after the events of the original and find that he has somehow managed to get himself trapped in another kingdom besieged by magical sand monsters. Once is an accident, twice is just carelessness really, but all the same, it's up to the Prince to put things right. And if you feel like giving him a hand, Prince of Persia The Forgotten Sands is now 60% off.
And while we're going back to Ubisoft's roots, it really would be a sin to deprive ourselves of the colourful, comedic style of the legendary Rayman. Born back in the halcyon days of cartoon platformers, Rayman proved that he hadn't lost a step when he sprang back into action with Origins. He's on even better form in the follow-up, Rayman Legends, which is now 75% off. We once again find our limbless hero bounding across a variety of gorgeous 2D worlds, filled with things to run, jump, and punch through. And because the game takes a pretty laid-back approach to the rules of its zany world, you just never know what you're going to see when you move on to a new stage. You might be racing along in time to an instrumental version of Black Betty, diving underwater to partake in a little stealth gameplay, or even surfing through a Day of the Dead inspired world on a sea of guacamole. Because once you've decided that your lead character doesn't even need to have arms or legs, pretty much anything goes.
Moving on to one of the more recent chapters in Ubisoft's lengthy tale, and we find ourselves up amongst the heavens with Immortals Fenyx Rising, which is now half price. After Zeus and his godly brethren are left powerless and scattered across the land, it's up to you to put things right. Fortunately, that means wandering across a vibrant, mythological world which looks even more beautiful in full 4K 60 on the Xbox Series X. The Olympians you rescue can also kit you out with some godly powers, so working together will be key to surviving out in the ancient wilderness. After all, Team might not have an eye in it, but a Cyclops does, and he will absolutely use it to find and murder you if you don't come packing some serious power. Plus, with its fast-paced combat and cracking tale of bickering Greek gods, it's the perfect game to get you ready for Hades' arrival on Xbox Game Pass at the end of the week.
Another one of Ubisoft's stunning open-world efforts, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is now 30% off. This time around, the vibe is more Thor than Zeus as you and your band of Viking warriors set sail for merry old England with the general goal of conquering it for themselves. Because, Vikings. How you go about doing that though is up to you, as the game blends the stealthy backstabbing from earlier Assassin's Creed games with the option to take more of a kick the door down and see what happens approach, rather than all that sneaking and strategizing, because again, Vikings. In either case, the next-gen version adds a level of fluidity which makes navigating the game's sprawling world even more seamless, with reduced loading times and a 60 FPS frame rate on the Series X, plus a 4K 30 option on the Series S. And however you choose to move through it, the game's world is utterly gorgeous. An intricately recreated version of the past which is alive with wildlife, awe-inspiring scenery, and mythological mysteries.
And to round out our collection of Ubisoft's gems, we've got the game that takes the studio's love of open world mischief, moves it to a modern setting, and turns the chaos factor up to 11. Watch Dogs Legion. Now 50% off, Watch Dogs Legion saw Ubisoft making good on their outlandish promise to deliver a game where there are no NPCs. Everyone is playable. The character you spot might be a construction worker, an IT assistant, or a stage hypnotist, but if you think they're the right person for the job, then they are now a fully fledged espionage agent working at the behest of a radical hacktivist syndicate. And to be fair, the job market is pretty difficult right now, so, you take what you can get. The game's effectively limitless cast of characters all feel like fully formed human beings too, plucked from their little lives to go on missions with you, which adds an extra weight to your decisions, especially if you're playing in permadeath mode. Poor Liam from marketing really doesn't deserve to end up riddled with bullets after all, so try to play carefully.
And if you're a sucker for the high-stakes drama which permadeath offers, then this 75% discount on XCOM 2 will surely catch your eye. Here's the situation. The year's 2035 and a bunch of hideous aliens have conquered Earth, thoroughly besting humanity on the battlefield and turning what remains of the Earth into a brutal police state. It's not the horrifying future which Gra has been warning about, but it's still, not great. What remains of the resistance now operates out of a mobile base, staying on the move to avoid detection and doing their best to hit the enemy where it hurts. As a result, XCOM 2 takes on a slightly different dimension to previous games. It remains that signature turn-based style, with the player commanding soldiers on a grid and trying to outmaneuver the enemy. But this time you'll be engaging in a lot more guerrilla warfare, sneaking up on the enemy and plotting ambushes to try and give yourself a fighting chance in a battle that seems almost unwinnable.
Victorian London was a pretty hard place to get by in at the best of times, what with all the plague, rats, and musical pickpocket gangs on the loose. But the version of it you'll find in Sunless Sea is an even tougher nut to crack, thanks to the fact that it's been transported to an underground world dominated by a huge, dark body of water. But you're still got to make a living, so you'll just have to hop in your boat, chart a course, and hope for the best. And make no mistake, there are plenty of treasures to be found out amongst the exotic islands and far reaches of the sea, and plenty of people who will pay handsomely for them if you can bring them home. But that is a pretty big if. A giant sea monster sized if, actually. Between the sinister creatures lurking under the water and the pirate ships roaming on top of it, the Sunless Sea is a place of constant danger, and that's before you've even begun to worry about fuel, food, or the rapidly deteriorating sanity of your crew. At least the game's now 60% off, so your watery grave just became a whole lot more cost effective.
And for a slightly less damp vision of the world beneath our feet, Undermine is another great choice, and is currently 50% off. In this classically styled roguelike, you'll be delving down deep into the murky black mines below and trying to dig up something worthwhile. Of course, you're not the only one kicking about down there, so it's a good thing that your trusty pickaxe also doubles as a pretty nifty weapon. Occasionally, you'll even meet someone friendly, give them a hand rather than the pickaxe to the forehead, and they might even help you out when you return to the surface. With a ton of upgrades to unlock with the spoils of your subterranean labour, Undermine crafts the sort of endlessly satisfying game loop which all good roguelike games run on. Diving down into the mines, battling through a bunch of randomly generated enemies, eventually meeting your tragic demise, and then diving back in to do it all over again with some shiny new gear.
Last but not least, we've got a Dishonored twin pack with the second game and Death of the Outsider now a massive 85% off. Both games stay true to all the things that made the original game great. The gritty, neo-Victorian world, the branching game paths which leave you free to pick your own style of play, and the simple, uncomplicated pleasure of turning rats into weapons of mass destruction. Whether you're playing once again as Corvo Atano, protecting his bloody legacy with his daughter Emily, or spinning off to spend some time as Billy Lurk in Death of the Outsider, you'll find a wide arsenal of deadly tools at your disposal. From time bending and teleportation magic to all manner of gadgets and explosive devices, they provide an almost endless variety of ways to go about a given mission, especially once you start combining them. Just remember that the choices you make will be reflected in the world around you, so if you want to keep the neighborhood looking healthy, maybe don't solve every one of your problems with an exploding crossbow. It's a good tip.
From Persian royalty to humble miners and legendary assassins, we'd say this week's selection of deals covers a pretty wide spectrum of the human experience, or at least the more interesting bits. Let us know which deals you're keen on in the comments, and we'll be back soon with more tips, tricks, and news. Bye!